as therapists, I know we all have our opinions about every single thing that we all do. And it's hard. It's hard to hold space when we already hold space for so many things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't already sought your own healing, but if you haven't found the right fit for a therapist, then reach out to one of these coaches. Like in the Therabundle, we have connections all over. Like we just talked about that. Like we literally have connections all over. We know therapists that have space or are looking for clients, and we want to be able to connect you with someone that makes sense.
Welcome to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. Hi, I'm Jeanene Wolfe, and I'm your colleague down the hall. I have a passion for helping fellow therapists get the clinical and collegial support we all need to do this work. And wow, it just keeps getting harder every day. I'm the founder and facilitator of the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. I have been a social worker for almost 30 years, and I own a successful solo online private practice. More of us than ever are practicing in solo or online practices, and we all need colleagues to process cases with, commiserate with on those really hard days, and also to celebrate our successes with. In this podcast, I'll bring you insights about trends and changes in our field and sit down with amazing therapists who are doing amazing work. We'll discuss fictionalized cases, ways to practice sustainably, and of course, there will be plenty of laughing. I love laughing with friends. I'm so glad to have you as one of my colleagues down the hall. Hello, everyone. You're listening to another episode of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. I'm your host, Jeanene Wolfe, and today I'm joined by Becca Ferguson. Becca is a licensed professional counselor, business coach for therapists, and the founder of the Therapy Office in Springdale, Arkansas. She helps mental health professionals build sustainable, growth-oriented businesses while staying true to themselves. As an ADHD creative and trauma survivor, Becca brings a unique, authentic approach to both therapy and business development. Known for her authenticity and drive for justice, Becca teaches others how to thrive without losing sight of who they are. So today we are going to be doing a little bit of an introduction to Therabundle. And if you've followed me for any time at all, you know that I'm a huge supporter of Therabundle. I think it's a great resource for therapists, and Becca is contributing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I will say she's contributing about a resource for documentation and clinical work. And if there's one topic that 99% of therapists feel they need more training on, it's documentation. So I think this is going to be a really helpful episode. Welcome, Becca. It's so good to have you.
Yes, it is super fun to be here. When you were talking about your podcast in the big group chat, how helpful it is with just like helping collaboration and working together, I was like, I have got to hop on here and chat with you and meet you. And talk about all the fun things that are going on. So I was totally game for this.
And, you know, I was looking out, I was spying on you a little bit getting ready for this episode.
Okay.
Like we have so much in common. We are both ADHD. We both have products and offerings to support other therapists. I run consultation groups. You do supervision groups. So there's a lot of overlap, I think, in both our mission and the way we love to support our colleagues. So that's really cool, getting to meet someone else who's doing kind of a similar thing.
Yeah. So actually, a lot of what I do, and I'm sorry, we're recording this, and I have a very codependent cat that is here with me too. So if you hear like screaming in the background, anybody that's listening, it's not a child. It's a codependent cat. So I'm so sorry about that. She's just like very concerned about everything that I do.
Well, and since the pandemic, I've seen more cats than ever.
It's just a problem. If I don't give her attention, then she'll have a hairball in the middle of this recording, and it'll just be like, I have to give her attention. And so
I love that.
I know it's a terrible situation. But anyways, so yeah, a little bit just about, you know, what I provide and how I got started. I haven't been a therapist for that long, surprisingly. It's been a whirlwind of a journey. I got into grad school and started my journey in 2017. And so when I look at the timeline of things, I try and it's weird because, when you have ADHD, time is not necessarily like this concept that you grab onto. You don't really understand how fast or how slow things are going sometimes because everything is so urgent and you just have to grab onto it and go. And you're just trying to learn as much as you can and grasp as much as you can. And so I started my grad school journey in 2017 and I graduated in 2019 because if I wasn't going fast, I wasn't doing well, basically, is kind of how I interpreted it. And I got my provisional license. I became an LAC in 2020, February of 2020, right before COVID hit. And then why not try and complete all my hours in 16 months and just go ahead and just torture myself while I was at it, because that just made everything easier. And I created this Facebook group while I was an LAC that I really didn't think was going to do anything for me in my professional career. But I created this Facebook group because I just wanted a place for LACs and or licensed associate counselors and licensed master social workers, grad students, interns to get together and ask what people were calling the stupid questions. And it was because we had therapist groups in Arkansas, which is where I'm from. But we had therapist groups in Arkansas that were networking groups. But I noticed like the interns and grad students and LACs and LMSWs were asking questions about documentation. And they were asking questions about just regular things with supervision. And therapists were being really mean. Just
my God, so mean, so mean. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
And I was like, what in the world is going on? And then you try and get someone in there that was trying to help. And then it's like, why are you coaching? I hate coaches. Like, you're not allowed to be in this group. Coaches are not allowed to be in this group. You can't be a therapist and a coach. And just like completely like crap down someone's throat. And I'm just sitting there like, I think I picked the wrong profession. I'm like, I picked this profession. Like, honestly, I was like in ministry before I became a therapist. And I got out of ministry because ministry was terrible to me.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
And so it's like I left that because I was like, well, therapy has got to be nicer than ministry. And to my surprise, I was just like, what in the world's going on? And so I created this group and I really wanted to work in a community and build a community where people could gather and just ask the quote unquote stupid questions, because I wasn't calling them stupid questions. And in the process of people asking those questions, I started building resources. And then I met Megan Gunnell. And in the process, like after I got my LAC after I got my LPC and became like a licensed professional counselor and went into solo practice and started building my business, I met Megan Gunnell. And then I met Tamara with Therabundle and learned like I can build products. Like this is an actual thing. And then I met Gabs and I did all this. Like, why don't you convert this into products? You have all these things that you've done and you've just been giving it to people for free. These are things that you could stop breaking your back and you could give to people. They're valuable things. And you have this group of like 300 or 400 people. That's great. But like other people can benefit from this too.
Yeah. And I just want to jump in here and just sort of reinforce what you're talking about, because we are raised up in graduate school to believe that we can never make money, that it's all about everyone else supporting compliance, supporting colleagues. And when you have things that you begin offering and then you get overwhelmed with the need of people, and then you're like, okay, this is not sustainable, so I'm going to start charging. You get so much hate for that, so much hate, because everyone believes that you should just give freely of everything. And most of them have no idea what it's like to manage a Facebook group, to be creating these products for people, to, just giving everything away. And eventually you're like, it's just not sustainable. So you're either going to stop doing it or you're going to say, okay, I can make some money doing this. And that's okay. Therapists are allowed to make money.
Yes. I think it almost becomes this like, I hate using this word, and I tell clients this too. I hate using the word resentful because I feel like it's such a strong word. But in our community, being therapists, it's almost like this very taboo topic because when we're talking to other therapists, I try and be very careful with who I talk to because I want to make sure that who I'm talking to is a safe therapist. Yes. And knowing that, like, even when I go on and I'm like this, we're on a podcast that other therapists are going to listen to, right? It's like, we know that as therapists, we have a duty to understand what it's like to be genuine and understand everybody's side of the story. But then I also understand the side of the story of where we get upset at other therapists who do decide to have the quote unquote passive income, because it's not. Let's be really real.
No, there's nothing passive about any of this. You're right.
If you see an ad where someone says build an Etsy shop and it's passive income, they are
make money while you sleep.
They are lying to you, because I have had online courses for 2 years and I have not made a lot of money from it. Okay. Just from it sitting there. But I will say that the thing is, like, we listen to people and their problems all day long. And then you have therapists that are struggling, like, to make ends meet financially. And who's listening to them? We are. And we don't have space for each other because our empathy meter is running dry. It is. And how do we create space for each other and be empathetic towards each other without being, this automatic judgmental foot on the gas, because we're tired. And, we want someone to listen to us too. We need someone to collaborate with us. We need that person that's like this, collaborative co-working colleague, basically, that knows how to have a conversation with us, can listen to us on both sides. I feel like that's the type of environment, and where I've been, that's where my ADHD has been thriving. Basically, I can manage multiple conversations at once. And I feel like that's where I thrive, is just trying to help people understand how to have conversations with people again. And also create something that's sustainable.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're tired. We're freaking exhausted. The one-to-one model is like, people need therapy. Absolutely. Yeah. But people also therapists need to be paid fairly.
Yes.
And we need to figure out a model. We all need to work collectively. We need to stop, we need to stop shutting down people's throats about, hey, and we need to work together to come up with a solution. And we're not going to do that if we aren't being collaborative with each other. I think everyone has a solution, but we all need to talk to each other about it.
Yeah. And since the pandemic, in my consultation groups and in other areas where I interface with other therapists, we're exhausted. I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, no one knew what was going to happen. So we were all bringing on extra clients, trying to support as many people as we can. And then we have returning clients. And the next thing you know, everyone else is at home cleaning out their closets. We are working tirelessly while we are also experiencing the same trauma as the rest of the world. And I feel like so many of us have still not recovered from that. It's, and so when you continue trying to find ways to have income outside of the one-to-one model, it can be difficult, but I agree. It's a way to be sustainable. And I see more and more therapists who are offering groups in their private practice. They're offering intensives in their private practice, ways to get more open space, really, to see more clients without adding 5 hours to your workday.
I think it's hard. I had this conversation with my husband a couple months ago because he was going through a really rough time back at the beginning of the year, and his depression was just really taking a hold of him. And I was at the point where he was in such a bad spot that I really couldn't see clients because I was working overtime taking care of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he necessarily realized how much of an emotional toll it was taking on me to take care of him, to also hold space for my clients, to hold space for my business, to hold space for him, to hold space for myself. And one day I just completely lost it. And I was just like, who listens to me? Who takes care of Becca? And so like, I am very like unashamed with the way that I do it. I was like, I go to therapy twice a week because that's 2 hours a week where I know someone is listening to me.
Right.
And I know that I have things that I need to work on and plans that I need to figure out. And that makes a difference for me. But also it helps me discover identity, and it helps me discover, you know, where I go from here. But creating something that's sustainable and understanding where we're going in our own careers is so important.
Right. Yeah. And I, over the last 2 years, I did continue working on a scaled back way. But when I lost my dad and then a year later, my brother-in-law, people don't understand. Like if I was an accountant, going to work might have felt like a break. Like I'm just going to focus on these numbers. I'm not going to think about my grief. I'm not going to think about all this other stuff. But when you're a therapist, you know, you're talking to a client who's just,
and you're going to climb and deal with the same exact shit you're going through.
Yeah. You know, so you have a client who's talking about the death of their father while you're sitting there inside, you're just dying. But our job is to show up and have space for them and support them. And it can be really challenging at times. And those clients in particular are so exhausting because we are humans who happen to be therapists.
Yes. So
difficult dance at times.
So, you know, going back to like documentation and making things easier and understanding, okay, how do I tie in all of these things to make my life easier as a therapist, but also as a business owner? Because there's two parts, right? I think in grad school, the big secret that they didn't let me into was that I was going to have to be a business owner.
No one knows that. None of us know that. And so we do not get any training around that at all.
I'm over here. I remember having a conversation with my dad, who did own a business my whole entire childhood. I'm gonna say this sentence, which is a weird sentence to say, but he didn't own a business great. Like, he didn't do a good job at it. Like, he kind of just like threw things against a wall and hope it stuck type kind of thing. And I watched that and I didn't realize how much that affected me until I owned a business. And so it's like when I started my business, I was like, I'm going to do the same thing because why not? Right? Let's just throw things against the wall and hope it sticks. And then all of a sudden I realized how expensive that was. And then I remember why we were poor when I was growing up. I remember why my dad literally put a bowl on my head and cut my hair. Like, then I remember why that happened. Okay.
I do a training about 4 areas of private practice that just like need your attention. And I typically start the training off with raise your hand if you own a small business. And none of them raise their hands. I'm like, guess what? If you're in practice, you this and you can figure that out.
Surprise. But I mean, like being a business owner, a part of it is like understanding how to be strategic about it and figuring out what works best for you. And one of the things, being ADHD, first of all, I was basically told my whole entire life I didn't have any mental health problems, which, surprise, growing up, not having that identity and then having it. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD actually until this year and at the beginning of this year. And so part of me realizing I have ADHD was like all of these systems that I have created was me managing my ADHD this whole entire time.
Yes, yes.
And so I have found that a lot of the therapists that I work with are neurodivergent therapists.
Oh, I think there's a huge percentage, and some of them don't know that they are neurodivergent. I think people I think people are starting to get it a little bit more because, there's still people out there that are saying ADHD is so way overdiagnosed. It's ridiculous. And I'm like, no, it's way underdiagnosed.
If you're saying that sentence, you're probably ADHD. Like, let's just
or you aren't educated. You're looking at the old standards for ADHD and what we used to understand about ADHD, not the way we see it now.
Yeah, because one of the top things that I regret saying more than anything in my whole entire life is getting on a podcast before COVID talking about overdiagnosed ADHD. I'm like, oh, wow. Becca wasn't educated and Becca didn't know what I was talking about. And it's like, Becca with ADHD and nobody's business.
Yeah. Those things that we regret saying years and years ago.
Yeah, let's not take that one back from the vault. But I hear all of those things, and all these systems that I've created, they have structure, they have routine, they have the ability to, not only break it down, but help you understand things in a way that give you a sense of autonomy and agency in your own business so you can create a structure that makes sense for you. Because I know as an ADHD person, the problem is you buy a planner that someone says, this is the planner for an ADHD person. Great. Awesome. I'm going to buy it. Perfect. Love it. I get the planner and it doesn't speak to me. And I've spent $46 on this planner, right? Perfect.
How many planners do you have to buy before you figure out it's not the planner?
Exactly. So a lot of my courses and a lot of my one-to-one work is sitting through and creating something. And it's okay, you want to work on your intake and creating a template for your notes on what speaks to you. Let's go through and I'll be your client for your initial intake. Ask me all your questions and I'm going to sit through and I'm going to make a documentation template for you and we'll create it together and see what makes sense with your flow so you can be the most strategic and efficient person that you can be. If you want to do concurrent notes, you can do concurrent notes.
Yeah. And that's such a great point because people get all hung up. And I made the mistake of signing up for an EHR that you could not edit the progress notes. I didn't stay with them very long. But, the thing of it is with notes, if you can set up a template for yourself that flows the way your mind works, then that makes it so much easier. But when you're trying to make your mind fit with another template that doesn't flow for you, then you don't get your notes done because you feel overwhelmed, you feel frustrated. So that is such an important thing for people to understand who are neurodivergent, but also neurotypical people. Don't work against the current, go with the current. Find a way to go with the current.
Yes. And so the documentation course that I'm contributing, it's normally $99. I was a little imposterish about putting it at $99. Let's go ahead and throw that out there. But then all the work that I put into it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put it there because I feel like it has a lot of value in it. I go through from the very beginning. The whole workbook is there where I walk through how to get people to understand not only how to use your DSM to create a chief complaint, because that's one of the hardest things that I see people struggling with when it comes to an initial treatment plan. People don't understand how to properly back up a diagnosis in a chief complaint. And so when you go, or if you ever have to go to court, then I've heard this a million times. And in coaching and just in life with therapists in general, they say, I don't want to be mean in my notes. And I'm like, fair, valid. Okay, you don't want to be mean in your notes. We don't have to be mean in your notes. We want to protect the client in your documentation. That's our only goal. And so
wait. I have to add one thing in here.
Yes.
We want to protect the client and we want to protect our license. And people forget that key piece. Yes.
Right. Protect the client and protect the license. And I think that's the main thing is like when we protect the client and our license, we're writing something that is, it's not necessarily that we're writing something mean. I think that what I hear a lot is like, if I write that they have PTSD and that they have intrusive thinking and that they can't regulate things, and that's mean. And I'm like, no, that's not mean. I think that's you using your honesty. And I also think that that is backing up the diagnosis, because if you ever go to court and you say that they have PTSD, but they can regulate all their thoughts, then any attorney is going to rip them to shreds on the stand. Period. So you need to be able to back up all your documentation and say that there's no chance that they could use your documentation against your client, and make it look like you don't know what you're talking about. Because if you say you're a PTSD expert, again, so protecting your license, but then you don't know what you're talking about in your documentation, how does that also protect you? So there's so many sides of the story. I use the Wiley Treatment Planner a lot when I teach this, because it is so simple to use the Wiley Treatment Planner. And you can just knock your documentation out that way. And so I really suggest people, if you want to check it out, again, it's normally $99, but with the Therabundle, it's $99 for the whole entire Therabundle.
Yeah. And I think there's 70 contributions this year, something like that.
Something crazy like that. But
yeah.
Isn't there like introductory prices for the Therabundle this year or something like that? There's some sort of shenanigans that I saw that's going on. I don't know what tomorrow's doing.
I don't know about the shenanigans. What is different this year is that there is, right before the Therabundle, there's the Thera Summit, where Tamara has gathered people who are doing like 20-minute segments on some area of expertise. And so people can purchase, they can go to the summit for free if they want to have ongoing access to the trainings, and they can purchase that. And then when that is wrapping up, then the Therabundle is going to get released. And then people can buy the whole package for the price of, some of the offerings themselves. Some of them, there are some high dollar ones in there. So
yeah, there are.
It's a huge deal that, you can purchase so many great resources.
I know last year I went and got the bundle myself as a contributor, and I still use some of those resources. Mm-hmm. And it has been so helpful for me to be able to have some of those resources and then use some of them in my client work too.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, and I'm excited because I am actually going to get my email list up and running this year.
Great.
Praise be. I'm actually going to get my email list up and running. So my goal is to be able to work with you guys this year. And, if you download my documentation workbook, who knows? Maybe we'll be able to do some fun little coaching calls and get together and create your templates and get together. So I'm excited to work with everyone and get fun as we work together.
Yeah. And from the contributor side, it's so much fun.
Oh my gosh.
We have different ways that we communicate with each other. And this is where you truly see therapists supporting therapists in that, because we're there cheering each other on. We are sharing each other's contributions. We're finding oh my gosh, this resource is amazing. I want everyone to know that this is part of the bundle. And the camaraderie is unreal. Tamara has done a beautiful job just, really making sure that we work together. We don't compete, try to all support each other. And it's just a great, great community, which Tamara is aces at building supportive communities.
It was honestly I was telling you this before we started recording, but I ended up on her email list by being a contributor for the bundle. And so I got multiple emails at the beginning of the semester about her pod. And I just remember telling my husband, hey, this was around the time that I was really struggling. I was like, I'm not feeling heard. I really need extra support. I want to work with Tamara because she does build really incredible products and has, this amazing community. And so he was like, do it. Go ahead, like work with her if that's what you want to do. And so I joined her pod this semester and we meet, twice a month. I'm the only therapist in the US that joined this pod. Everyone else is
in the UK.
Is in the UK. And so like, I honestly, it is the most incredible thing. Minus like one other therapist that's originally in France and she's in the US right now, which I just like, my heart is with her right now because she is struggling so much being in the US. I'm so desensitized with everything that's going on right now in our country just because we've lived here our whole entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
But like watching her struggle as much as she is being here because she's not used to all of the struggles that we face because we're so desensitized to it. She's just like, she's struggling. And I'm over here, I'm like, my heart hurts so much because you don't realize how much we go through. This group has been so healing for me because we all have imposter syndrome. Like, let's just go ahead and throw that out there. Like, every single one of us apologize at the end of saying something. So we're all like, I think this is a good idea, but this is what I'm going through. Sorry for talking. And I just love that we all have this, ability to encourage each other and uplift each other and share our business ideas. And it's been so healing in finding our identities with our business and everything. And then Tamara's always been like, contribute to the bundle. You guys have incredible ideas. And so a couple of us did contribute something to the bundle inside of that pod.
Great. Yeah.
One weekend, I got up at 6 a.m. to go work with someone that was in the UK because she was like, well, it's noon here. So do you want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and co-work with me? And I was like a zombie, but sure, why not?
Yeah. I through Tamara, I've met so many overseas therapists, and I also in my consultation groups, I have someone in Australia. I have someone, oh my gosh, I'm just like blanking. Malaysia, a couple of places.
Wow.
Dubai. And so it's always
so much traveling.
Yeah. And it's also hard to keep track because I'm like, oh, how's your day been? They're like, well, it's 6 a.m. I'm like, oh,
yes.
okay. And then the other people are like, oh my gosh, it's been a long day and I just need to go to bed. So I'm happy to be here, but I'm tired.
Yes. We have one person in the pod. I can't remember where she's at, but it's always tomorrow when we meet.
And probably Australia.
Oh gosh, I'm terrible. So I failed geography. Let me just go ahead and throw that out there. That's the one class I failed because in the very first day in 8th grade, he was like telling us how fast the earth was spinning underneath us. And I like immediately got vertigo and stopped listening for the rest of the semester. So I completely failed that class, but I can't remember where she was, but it's always tomorrow. Yeah. And so I always am like, I'm like the dad joke person of the group. So I'm like, how's the weather tomorrow? And she's like, why are you asking me this question?
Yeah. Right.
But it's an amazing group. I absolutely love it. I will say, like, as therapists, I know we all have our opinions about every single thing that we all do. And it's hard. It's hard to hold space when we already hold space for so many things. And if you haven't already sought your own healing, but if you haven't found the right fit for a therapist, then reach out to one of these coaches. Like in the Therabundle, we have connections all over. Like we just talked about that. Like we literally have connections all over. We know therapists that have space or are looking for clients, and we want to be able to connect you with someone that makes sense for you and give you the help that you need with whatever it is that you're looking for to feel heard in whatever aspect, whether that is business that you're struggling with or mental health. And so I feel like I say that as just like a plug at the end of every single podcast, because like you are important and you deserve to be heard with whatever aspect it is that you're looking to be heard. That is important. It's important to get rid of that stigma because there is very much a stigma there.
Yep. Yep. Okay, Becca, I have one final question, and I forgot to prep to make sure you this question.
I saw your email. Don't worry. I did read. You're good. You're good.
I want to be on the spot. Okay.
Yes.
So, Becca, what is your favorite catchphrase or analogy to use with clients?
Yes. So it is they hate it with a burning passion inside of their soul when I say it, but they also love it too when it helps. But I always tell them big, deep breaths. And when it annoys them, it's usually when they don't want to do it because they want to be annoyed and they don't want to work on things. But then usually when it helps, they realize that it's okay to feel the process. And so I encourage everyone to take a big, deep breath because we have talked about a lot of things and face the process because it is a process.
Yeah.
And
I love that. And I'm sure that, you have the experiences that most of us have where that client is like, and then your voice was in my head saying, take big, deep breaths. And I took big, deep breaths and I felt better. And they're so respectful about it, but they're so appreciative all at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. I said, I had one client that was like, I had your voice in my head all weekend. That was like, big, deep breaths. And I was like, that I need to like patent that, trademark it, Apple to make it a ringtone. And
and then when you get the spouse on board, when they happen to mention to the spouse and then they're stressed out and their spouse is like, does Becca say you should take a big, deep breath?
Yes. I also tell people like all the time, I feel like between big, deep breaths, the other phrase that I tell people all the time is throw me under the bus. Like whenever they're like, I'm like, if you're having a fight with your spouse and you want to win something, throw me under the bus. Say Becca said, and just throw me under the bus. And and they're like, that's not how it works. And I'm like, I know, unhealthy.
Yes,
but yes, that's what I do. Big deep breaths.
Yeah. Well, Becca, thank you so much for joining me today. The show notes will contain information about where they can find you if they want to reach out to you, either for therapy themselves or for coaching. So they'll be able to access you that way. And for all you hardworking therapists out there, please remember our work is hard, but it doesn't have to be lonely. Thank you so much for listening to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to colleaguedownthehall.com, where you'll be able to learn more about getting the clinical support you need and resources to help you work in a supported, sustainable way. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your therapy friends and colleagues. Subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.